Hi, we're back discussing detoxification here with Dr. Alexander Haskell. This is Erin Haskell, and today we're talking about the modalities, all the different ways of going about detoxing. So tell us a little bit of an overview of the different ways you suggest for patients.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about the body's storage of different toxins, and we'll keep this discussion focused on the different pathways, one being the easiest one, which is getting out through the skin. So there's very little reason why a person should not either have a sauna at home or to locate a nearby kind of a sports center or spa, or there's also instructions on how to do a sauna at home if you don't have a sauna, using a hot bath to get the body temperature up, and then covering with blankets enough to keep the sweat going for probably at least 45 minutes, usually lying in bed. So that's the external pathway, which is pretty simple, and the advantage of that is that the toxins coming out through the skin is a lot easier for the body to handle than the toxins being excreted from different storage sites, such as the fat cells, which those then enter into the blood and the circulation, and they have to go through the pathways of the liver and the gallbladder and the large intestine. So part of the purification has to do with sort of restricting certain foods which inhibit the release of toxins. I'm talking about the internal system now, and also providing the cells with lots of nutrients, primarily through juicing. So what primarily inhibits, the category of foods that inhibit the detoxification internally is that, again, the primary toxins which are the most difficult and maybe most harmful to the body are those toxins which are considered fat-soluble. So these tend to attach to fat in the body, and that could be the fat in the brain or the fat that surrounds the nerves in our system. But a lot of them attach to the fats in the blood, primarily triglycerides. And triglycerides are a form of fat. They're sort of a form of potential energy. And those triglycerides primarily are stored, or they go into fat cells. We don't utilize the triglycerides for energy. They're broken down into what are called free fatty acids and also glucose. We don't use those, don't burn them up. Then they will be shunted into fat cells, and those fat-soluble toxins sort of piggyback on top of the triglyceride and get stored into the fat cells.
So just to overview a little bit, so as we're not talking about just maintaining detox. We're talking about more aggressive detox for somebody, a 2-week to a month-long program. And so the different ways of actually detoxing are, correct me if I'm wrong, defecating or peeing or sweating, correct? Are there other, and then we're breaking it down into the different ways of helping those three modalities. Are there any other ways of detoxification as far as the overview, the three ways?
That's pretty much it. The kidneys are excreting those toxins which have passed through the liver and have become water soluble, and those remain in the blood and then are excreted through the kidneys. Some water soluble, it's a little difficult to explain, but some water soluble toxins will get into the colon, but the colon or the stool is a primary exit way for the fat soluble toxins.
Yep. So Dr. Alexander Haskell found that there's many ways of course, fasting or putting more herbs or supplements into and helping release it all through urination or defecation. But what we're finding is that the easiest path, unless someone can't handle it, they really don't like saunas. Sauna work is one of the best ways of detoxing because your body is not burdened with all of the toxins having to go through each of the organs. It's able to get it out without having to go through the digestive system, correct?
Yeah, through the liver, gallbladder, and intestines. That's correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what do you find? What would be some reasons why someone should not get into the sauna? Because obviously for me, like I do well with the sauna because I had a harder time modifying my diet. I would find that I'd have a lot more cravings and I wouldn't be able to see it through. And then as soon as I did sauna work, all the cravings went away and I was able to modify my diet as well. But I didn't have to go as extreme as fasting. Now I'm able to fast more, but it took me a few times of going through detoxification to get to where I was comfortable with. I wouldn't have as many toxins going through my body. It was a little bit overwhelming for me to go through fasting as a first detox.
Yeah. Well, I think probably the situation some people find themselves in is that their health has been compromised in a few ways. One of which is there's been a tremendous burden placed upon the adrenals, and they have some degree of adrenal fatigue. And the adrenals produce a hormone called cortisol, which helps to stabilize blood sugar. So there are instructions in that module about how to prepare for the sauna so that a person does not dip into hypoglycemia and stir up the body trying to somehow bring the blood sugar up. And if the adrenals are weak, they'll start producing actually adrenaline as a stress response rather than the cortisol. Mm-hmm. So any way we can unload some toxins through diet or through sauna, then a person can they won't have a sort of a difficult experience doing the sauna work. Other people who don't really sweat, they have a little difficult time because they're in that sauna and they're not sweating out the toxins, and it's a stress on the body. But there are instructions about how to use a certain type of brush to kind of exfoliate the skin to open up the pores. And I really advise people to be patient. If they don't sweat the first time or even maybe the second time, just be patient with the process. Eventually the body will really start to excrete some toxins. These people, they make a huge jump in their health just because their body has never gotten rid of toxins through that subdermal fat layer.
It's true. I remember when I first started doing sauna work, I barely could sweat, and then it's almost a pathway. You have to exercise that pathway, and then now I can sweat much easier. And it's funny because I used to think sweating was bad or something. It's like a great thing when you're able to sweat.
Yeah.
So funny. So what about fasting? What about fasting and sauna work at the same time? Is that too extreme for people, or how do they know what is too extreme for them?
Yeah. So let's kind of make different sort of differentiation on what is meant by that term fasting. So Hippocrates used in his therapies and helping people to recover their health, used water fasting a lot in his practice. And to me, I've been through a water fast, and it's not a pleasant thing to experience, but it does get results. But usually people go through a huge healing crisis. Maybe that will be one of our talks about what happened with me. But I really prefer a much more moderate approach to this. If a person can do water fasting more than like 2 or 3 days, they should really be in a situation where there's a physician handy or somebody that's really experienced with fasting that can guide them through this, because you do have to watch what's going on. There's certain things you have to monitor as far as urine and what's called the density of the urine, because that tells a lot. You also measure ketones and various things like that. So I prefer the more moderate approach, and really the idea behind any type of, let's say, restrictions is that these fat cells, what we're trying to do is get the fat out of the cells, and with the fat comes toxins released into the circulation and lymphatic system. The only way that you're going to get the fat out of those fat cells is when the, let's say, fasting glucose and also the insulin comes way down, because insulin indirectly sort of keeps those doors closed so that fat cannot come out. And this is the issue with diabetics. When they're using insulin, their insulin levels are usually pretty high just to maintain some normal glucose levels. That's why there's such an issue with weight gain with diabetics, because their insulin's always high, and the fat cell can never dump any of the fat from those cells. So the juice fasting part of this program is using foods or vegetables and some fruits which have what's called a very low glycemic index. They're turned into glucose slowly and just a little bit is turned into glucose, so the insulin levels will remain low, and therefore the fat can be excreted from the fat cells and the toxins come out at that time. If a person is going to be on a juice combined with eating food, which is perfectly fine, they're guided towards eating foods which fall in that same category, which is low glycemic foods, things that do not cause a major elevation of blood sugar, which therefore does not cause the insulin to rise too high. It settles fairly rapidly, and the body can still be pulling fat and toxins out of the fat cells.
Perfect. Sounds great. And the acid also been fascinated with taking all the green powders or taking a lot of greens in during this, whether it be juicing or to just modifying your diet to add a lot of greens. Tell us a little bit about, and I don't know if you're in agreement with this, but how the acid, the detox, the acids, the toxins are acid, and so they have to link up with an alkaline substance to be able to be excreted through defecation or through urination. Is that correct?
I think knowing that's going to happen, that probably the body will shift towards being acidic during the time of detoxification. So keeping the body very alkaline, which is part of the reason why juicing is so important, because most of those vegetables and some of the fruits will keep the body on, it will help to neutralize and bring the pH of the body back to being closer to sort of normal. But there are many different ways that the body maintains its pH through the respiration, how we breathe, the kidney function, all of those ways and mechanisms, how the body always tries to bring itself back into the proper pH. Most of the toxins are not necessarily neutralized by alkalinizing things, but it's just easier on the body not to go into too much acid. All of the mechanisms, the internal mechanism with the liver and the gallbladder and intestines, as far as I know, has nothing to do with actually neutralizing the acidity of those toxins. It's really the metabolism, the breaking down, either causing them to become more water-soluble so the kidneys can excrete them, or simply getting them out of the body by, breaking them down in the liver. They then go in the gallbladder to some extent. Those water-soluble, those lipid-soluble toxins then become more water-soluble and then excreted out into the small intestine.
Great. Okay, well, that's a great little overview for the modality. So basically, it's the three ways the body excretes, and in the modules and the readings and things, they'll get into more details of, because I'm sure some people have tried juicing, but they may have way too many fruits going on in a juicing versus making sure to get enough vegetables and all that, and we've outlined that. And so I think it's a great little overview conversation of the different modalities, from sauna to doing fasting to the possibility of somebody doing a water fast, and then just modifying their diet, herbs, supplements, all of that. We'll be getting that information out. So thank you so much. Okay. Ciao.